Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell movement.
Welcome to the Powell movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and we're finally in 2026. I've been waiting to get through New Year's for a long time. I went and saw Mudhoney at the Neptune Theater, a small venue that I've seen and emceed so many ski premieres at over the years, and it was awesome. But as you can imagine, it was a really heavy day. It was my 17th anniversary, and it was my birthday. And while I cry all the time, New Year's Eve was the worst. But I was good by the time the show started. When it became minutes before midnight, the tears started flowing. I thought back to all the awesome New Year's, birthdays, anniversaries that Ange and I had, and just how hard 2025 was for her and us. And I remember when they were counting it down, I had my hands over my mouth like I was in total disbelief. Like this is real and she was gone. And then I thought to myself, the last year and the past 3 years have sucked. And they were all about Ange and trying to keep her in good spirits, keep her comfortable, and keep her alive. But 2026 isn't about Ange anymore. I mean, she's not going to see 1 second of it. So this year and the future, it all has to be about me. It has to be about Keaton. And while I'm still going to be sad and I can never forget Ange, I have to try and power through it. So while you're going to hear more of Ange stuff in this intro and in other episodes, I'm going to try and stay away from talking about it every week and making it the whole intro. I'll get back to talking about my life, and the good news is for me, for the first time in almost 4 years, my life doesn't involve cancer or caretaking. The bad news is it doesn't involve Ange either, but we've established that. She dead. With that, welcome to season 10 of the podcast and to 2026. This is my last season of this version of the show. Will I go the whole year or just to 500 episodes? I'm not sure yet. And a lot of you have asked me why I'm shutting down the podcast, as the show has captured so much ski and snowboard history. But the answer is many things. The most important thing is that I started this podcast with my wife, Ange. She was my biggest cheerleader, my designer, my biggest critic, and she bought me a podcasting kit for Father's Day in 2015, and she believed in me enough to the point where she didn't freak out when I was like, hey, I think I'm going to quit my job and go all in podcasting in 2015. And I will say that she had a great job that allowed me to start the podcast and we didn't have to worry about money at that point. And she totally believed in me. But in the beginning, her attitude was kind of like, I won't believe this podcast thing's going to work until I start seeing the checks come in. And we are not changing our lifestyle one bit. Well, the checks came in and the podcast exceeded our expectations. And it went for 6 years and then Ange got cancer and then she died. A lot of this show reminds me of her and what we built in life, and I think that's why I'm ending this version of it. Plus, I've had a format and I've been doing the same exact thing every week for 10 years, and while it's still interesting and fun, I need to change it up for my sanity. On top of that, you're also going to notice that my sponsor list is changing too. For a few reasons. One, I haven't tried to sell sponsorships in quite some time, and I need to get on that. If you're a marketer or a business owner or whatever, and you're interested in reaching a lot of people who make a lot of money and spend it on snow-related things, well, email me at mike@thepowellmovement.com. I have slots for 2 more brands that I like. So that's one reason the sponsor list is changing, because I'm not trying. The other reason it's changing is because the industry isn't as healthy as it once was. And while there are plenty of reasons for that, the one I'm bummed on is that a lot of the brands have stopped investing in continuing to build the sport and culture. Everyone used to do this with magazine ads and with movie sponsorships, and some people still do that. And while I'll always back the movie sponsorships for the movie premiere tours and the community that they build year after year and the athletes that they support and brands they build, magazines are an interesting spend for me. Sure, they're a decent way to reach the core of the sport that's 45 years old and up, but there's no one younger reading them, and it's not no one. There's very few people younger reading them, and it's not 2000 anymore. So print doesn't hit the masses like it used to, or even close. Digital has taken that over. I think everybody knows that. And now things like podcasts are much cheaper and a much more effective way to reach people. And they're much more personal than words on paper. At least that's my opinion of them. And while I never want to see print die, I feel like if you want to make a difference in sales, invest in digital. And more importantly, if you want to make a difference in sales and the sport, invest in your local ski and snowboard shops, which are the lifeblood of the business. And that's my rant. Now it's time to get into my first episode of season 10. And what you're going to find this year is that I'm going to be reaching out to guests I had on almost a decade ago And I'll be catching back up with some legends. On top of that, I'll mix in some new awesome interviews, and you will have an awesome podcast for the rest of 2026. This week, I'm going to start out with one of the best skiers of the past 20 years. Angel Collinson's story is amazing. An aspiring racer, she didn't make the U.S. ski team. She finds big mountain comps by accident, and between contest results and filming, Angel became known as one of the best skiers in the world. And I did a full background story on Angel that you can hear in a podcast way back in my archives. But it wasn't meant to be for Angel, because burnout is something that happens everywhere in life. And it happened to Angel a year after we first chatted, so that would have been about 2019. While Angel was at the peak of her ski career, she quit and decided to sail off in the sunset. It's an interesting look at what happened to the ski life and times of one of the best to do it. Before we get into the podcast, I want to wish you a happy new year again. I want to thank you for all of the support over the past 3 years. This has easily been the hardest time in my life, and a lot of you have come out of the woodwork to talk and help, and I will never ever forget that. Thank you very much. There were also some people that totally disappeared from my life when things went south too. And you better believe that while you're still my friends, I won't forget that either. But you know what? At the end of the day, I lost the most important thing in my life other than my kid, and that fucking sucks for me and a lot of others, but it sucks most for Ange. I love you, babe, and while I'm going to try to talk less about you in these intros and outros moving forward, we will see what happens. Anyways, thank all of you for listening to my bullshit each week. It really has been the one outlet I feel comfortable talking about with all of this. Finally, I want you to support my incredible sponsors who do make this thing happen. They are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Best Day Brewing, and Ski Idaho. Now, it's time to chat with Angel Collinson. The last time you and I chatted, I had you sing a couple verses of songs on the podcast. And are you still big into music?
Yeah.
Is that something that you're doing a lot of still? I think there was at one point you were talking about not maybe making a career out of it, but pursuing it further. Is that something that you did?
Yeah, it's been interesting because I think I didn't want to approach music in a way that would burn me out. And so kind of the disciplinary and like rigorous approach. I have the rest of my life to study music. So I was working with a music teacher for like 5 years. I took a music production course in Denver, and I've just kind of been getting into DJing. So it's sort of like a slow burn, long time relationship thing happening.
What's your DJ name?
I haven't landed on one yet, but I led a retreat in the desert, and I pulled this like oracle card, and that one of the girls there, she was like making this artistic deck of cards, and the card that I pulled was Solar Storm, and they were like, that should be your DJ name. So working title, Solar Storm. I have no idea.
All right, there we go. You heard it here first is DJ Solar Storm.
No DJ, though.
No DJ, just Solar Storm. I'm not going to ask you to sing again this time. I'm not going to ask you to drop beats, but I did hear that you like to do impressions, and I start my show off every week with Colby West doing some impressions of like, hey, are you ready to listen to the Powell movement? Can I get you to do a couple of your best impressions?
I can't compare to Colby West.
Well, I mean, he's the best, obviously, but can you at least try? You've got to have a couple good ones that are like in your back pocket.
I mean, yes, we can do like Russian accent. I just finished my vodka. I'm ready to get chatty with you on this here podcast. Starting to feel a little bit of buzz, loosen up the tongue, vodka and the Cheerios. I'm ready to go.
There you go. See, you nailed it. And last time we talked about all your talents and you sang in the beginning. Now you gave me an impression in the beginning. But last time we talked, you were on top of the ski world. It was like 2018 the last time we did a podcast. So a long, long time ago. And I think the next season after that, you ended up blowing your knee. And how did you do it? And when you blew your knee that time, did it kind of change your mental game moving forward in your ski career?
Yeah, that's right.
I know, I'm throwing you way back into like a different time. This is like 8 years ago.
It feels like a whole lifetime ago, honestly. Yeah, well, that winter, I was kind of burnt out. And I just remember being up in Alaska in 2019. Actually, the line that I fell on where I blew my knee, I was standing on top of it with Griffin Post, and I'd kind of been having a weird day, and I was just like, man, Griffin, I'm just tired of having to scare myself all the time. Like, I was just feeling fatigued at that sentiment of if you're not scared shitless, it's not going to make the movie.
Right.
And it's true. It's like if you want to just ski a fun line, it's probably not going to go in the movie, and therefore you're wasting money and heli time and all of that. And like some people love that, and like Mac and Sage, that's what they live for. But for me, it took a lot to just be with that fear all of the time. And I think by that point, skiing had become work and my passion had kind of dwindled. And there was just a lot of factors. And my soul is just an explorative soul. So I just wanted to experience the world. And skiing felt like small, even though I was so grateful for all of the opportunities and grateful for the accolades and just all of the everything that happened. Like I was so grateful for it, and so that made it harder to walk away. But yeah, ultimately I was just like, man, I want to do other things and I'm not in love with it enough to really want to be this present as it takes to manage fear in this way. And so I said that, the famous last words out of your mouth, right? And then it was kind of this freak little thing that happened, and I just tipped straight over downhill, but it was so steep that I ended up violently tomahawking for 500, 700 feet, ended up in the bottom, and it was a pretty violent fall, but I was really lucky to be okay. And immediately I knew I blew my knee, and I knew I was really lucky to just have it be that. And I wouldn't say that it changed how I felt about skiing, but in that moment, I knew this is a potential window of opportunity to do something in a different way. And I didn't know what that looked like yet, but I kind of set about that summer doing PT my way, living life my way. And I think that it was the beginning of a long series of changes of just being like, yeah, you know what? I don't have to keep skiing if my heart's not in it.
I mean, for a lot of people, or most people at your level, they've wanted to be a pro skier forever, and then they finally make it. But for you, I'm sure it's like the travel and the culture were the fun things for you, and then the skiing was the part that wasn't the most exciting part, because you're almost like born and bred into being a skier, and you already had this one like champion ski career where you're trying to be like a US ski teamer, and that didn't materialize, and it was like you had already lived that ski life, and so this was a bonus life, right?
Totally. And because, I have no memories of not skiing, and free skiing, was always like my place to have fun and to mess around. Like when I was ski racing as a teenager, if I was getting stuck in training or, just like feeling a little burnt out, I would just trade in my race skis for my fatties and just rip solo. And it was such a place of freedom. And so then when that became like the thing that I was always doing, I didn't really have another avenue to be with myself, to explore myself. And yeah, it just kind of felt like my world had always been about skiing and had gone through different, branches and avenues throughout skiing. But yeah, I kind of fell into doing it professionally and felt really grateful for it. But also, it wasn't that dream that you have where you're like, the passion is to do that. And you're like, you're going to get there no matter what because you want it so bad. It was like, I never really had that.
Did you have that with racing? Did you really want it that bad to be like an Olympic ski racer? Was the passion there and then did it die after it? Or did you never have it and it was almost force fed for you just because you grew up in ski housing?
It was a little bit of both. I really like technically mastering things.
You're a perfectionist in some ways, right?
Yeah, 100%. And so for me, it's always a good challenge. Like whatever's put in front of me, I want to get as good as I can at it. And when I used to spend a bit of time thinking of if if I had had a different option of like a different life path to take, if mom and dad had, actually been like, hey, do you want to take an instrument or do you want to do this? There wasn't really an option to do anything else. Skiing was it. And I also saw like, oh, I can it felt like a way out. In that go like training super hard and getting really good at ski racing, I was like, oh, if I make it to the Olympics and if I start making good money, like I can pay for mom and dad's retirement because we grew up super frugal to live this incredible lifestyle, skiing in the winters and backpacking all summer. But ends were tight and mom and dad sacrificed a lot so that we could have this lifestyle outdoors. But it also felt like I wanted to get out of that lifestyle and make more money and be able to pay for going to Harvard. And, I had these aspirational dreams that I knew skiing would be able to pave the way for.
So the inner city kid that looks at basketball as his way out of the inner city and into just another tax bracket, it's not all that different from you, although you just come from an area of privilege and you were at the bottom of that whole privilege area. But you really saw skiing as I can use skiing to get myself out of this beautiful place of Snowbird, but out of the economic status that I'm in, and I can have a better life because of it.
Yep, exactly.
That's a crazy thought for skiing because most people don't think of it like that.
Yeah, I know, right? It is kind of interesting because they did everything they could to make that lifestyle work. So we lived up in the employee housing and that was free. Our lift tickets were free. All of our stuff was secondhand. So essentially, like we were able to make the actual skiing part of it work for barely nothing. I mean, it was mostly just living expenses that we had to pay for. But, my mom homeschooled us up the canyon and I don't know how much money dad made, but I think he only worked during the winters. And then we took all summer off traveling in a van. And it was just his ski patrol salary of 4 months that we lived on as a family for all year round. So they were really, really good at stretching things. But yeah, skiing expenses were like at an all-time low. We weren't having to pay $300 or whatever it is for a day pass now. It's crazy.
It is crazy. But the thing with your life is when you got burnt out on ski racing and you were like, God, I just want to do something else. The only other thing you could do was just a different discipline of skiing. It wasn't like you had other outlets.
Well, when I got burnt out on racing, so I gave racing my all, narrowly missed the US ski team, and was pretty burnt out from just slave driving myself essentially. And I don't know, I think, a lot of pressure on myself. And when I narrowly missed the ski team, it was a blessing in disguise because I was so burnt out that I really didn't want to race anymore. But I had been deferring a full ride academic scholarship to the University of Utah. So I was just like, okay, it is time to pivot and go to school. And I love school and I was a really good student. And so I went to college and it was my brother who was like, Angel, you should try these big mountain ski comps. Like, I know you're just going to spend all hours of the day in the library, like studying. And, I took a pretty heavy course load. I was in the honors college. And so he was right. I only skied like 6 hours a week that first year, but it was back when you could like sign up for a qualifier day on the Free Skiing World Tour. And I went from racing 25 to 30 races a year to looking at the Free Skiing World Tour schedule and being like, wait, there's only 5 stops in the whole thing. Like, I'll just do all 5, no
Yeah,
sweat.
easy.
So I remember I like registered for the competitions before class in college, like sitting in one of those little desks. And I was like, all right, well, I'll see what this is about. And then my first competition was up in Revelstoke and I put my fat skis in this little Honda Civic and I drove 18 hours straight to Revelstoke and it was this crazy snowstorm and I decided to go the wrong way over this pass and it was so sketchy. I hit a deer. It was just like, and then I got to the competition, crashed on our friend Taylor Lyman's hotel floor that he'd rented with his dad. They let me crash on their hotel floor and I had no idea what I was doing and I was so nervous because I showed up at this competition. Everyone kind of knows each other. I like kind of looked up what the judging criteria was, like didn't really know, but it's pretty straightforward. And so I was just like, well, I just look and pick a line that I think I can ski well and I just do as well as I can. I asked people lots of questions. They were super friendly and ended up getting third that day and I like won the run on the second day and I was like, okay. And then ended up just doing well that first year and winning the overall. And then all of a sudden it was like, started getting money and sponsorship stuff. I started making enough money that I could pay for school, which was a wild thought. And then I started having to balance like sponsorship opportunities and being like, well, I don't know if I should accept this sponsorship opportunity if I'm going to be trying to juggle school at the same time. Like, I don't know that I can do a good job at both. And so I kind of like accidentally got into like big mountain skiing and competition and doing it as a career, just slow, steady slide, thanks to my brother.
So you burnt yourself out on ski racing for a long time. Then you get like a year off, year and a half off, and you can dive headfirst into school because you love that just as much as you love, or probably more than you love anything else, is learning, and you're really passionate about that. Your brother gets you out of the library and getting you to these contests, and you start doing well. And then it's a crossroads in your life. Is like, hey, do I continue with my free education or do I try this ski thing? And it's weird. Do you think that I kind of was burnt out with the ski thing before, but I'll quit this thing I'm passionate about, school, to try skiing again? Was there ever a thought like that? Or was it just, I've got a big opportunity and I have to take it?
Well, at that point, I think I sort of was in the honeymoon phase of because I'd always loved big mountain skiing. And there's something I didn't anticipate when your hobby becomes your job, the way that it changes your relationship to it. And it was a really slow slide in that way. And I feel like I sound so entitled when I say that. So I'm just like fully aware of, I don't know how ironic or privileged that sounds, but think I thought big mountain skiing was going to be different because there was so much freedom and there was a lot of components of racing that limited my self-expression. Like you couldn't listen to music during races and it was just way strict. And with free skiing, it was just the whole culture was way more liberal. Like everyone's partying and having a good time and everyone can do it their own way and you get to pick your own lines. And it just kind of felt like this much more expressive medium, I guess, and wasn't strict, wasn't limiting. With racing, it's like there's so many rules and you can get disqualified for so much stuff. And with Big Mountain, it was just like a free for all. And I liked that. And so I didn't anticipate kind of coming up against the burnout thing. But I think also that speaks to the way that I approach life and operate. And I think a lot of people can relate to burnout because you want to, perfect your craft or get good at something, dedicate yourself to something. But at what point does your perfectionism and your kind of slave driver nature start to hinder the love? Like, yeah, it'll get you good faster, but are you taking the fun out of it in the process? And so that's why with music, I'm like, I'm not like going to spend 8 hours a day on music stuff because I know if I do that, I'll probably, without realizing it, lose the joy.
But I think the difference between music and big mountain skiing and what you were doing is just the risk and the fear factor of it all. You could do music 8 hours a day and burn yourself out for sure, but you're not going to die. But when you're in those big mountains, I mean, I would think every time you're standing on top of a peak, you're scared. And if you're not scared, you're right. It's not going to make the movie. So after a while, does fear play into it? Like if you're not super passionate about something that you're doing anymore and your job is to go into the most dangerous places in the world, does fear ever like suck the life and fun out of everything for you?
Well, I think fear is a really interesting thing because I'm so grateful for the relationship with fear that I had to cultivate because I think one of the things that fear does for us is it tells us what matters, what we care about, what we're afraid of losing, what we're, like the consequences of things. Fear has so much information in it. And also, fear is a really incredible thing that gets us present. So, what I appreciated about those situations was learning how to work with fear and the ways in which it made me really learn to pay attention to myself, to the moment. But yeah, for me, my process with it is just like after a certain amount of time doing that, is the reward great enough to offset how much energy I'm spending listening to the fear, sitting with it, managing the nerves, doing all of that? And yeah, for me, it was not. But I do think that for some people, fear and its sharp edge helps them really be present in their life. And, more than anything else, like that'll wake you up and get your attention. And it requires all your faculties, all hands on deck. And I think there's something in our humanity, especially these days, and maybe since the beginning of time, that we really like being present and being fully in the moment. And fear is very sobering in that way. And not that it always has to be, life-threatening fear. And I think that's where I got to was like, okay, I've had enough. I've really worked this. I know this well. I don't feel like I care about this enough to continue putting my life on the line. I mean, there's so much I could say about fear, but there's a way in which it helps me with my relationship with myself. And I'm like, do I actually want to go out today? Or do I just feel like I have to? I'm like overly scared for no reason. Do I have to push it? If I'm just doing this sport for fun, what's the point? So it brings up all of these really interesting questions in regards to life, why we do the things we do, what we care about, and our relationship to ourselves. So, quit rambling there.
It's time for my first sponsor break. And I'm going to start with longtime sponsor Elan Skis. And if you haven't skied on an award-winning ripstick yet, you're missing out on something that ski brands have long said wasn't an option. A lightweight ski that powers through anything and truly rips. It's game-changing. And Elan, while they've been around for 80 years, have been changing the game of modern skiing by doing things like adding side cut to straight skis with the Elan SCX, which changed the whole industry. They're building skis by skiers in a place with ski culture in the Slovenian Alps. And most importantly, they're supporting local shops. When the competition goes and starts selling direct, Elan sticks by their retailers who have been by them since the beginning. Elan is just built differently, and they innovate with a purpose, and that's to make your on-snow experience better, easier, and more fun. It's this approach that brought you the Ripstick and all of their award-winning skis. And when you're in the market for a new pair, visit an Elan retailer, demo a pair of their skis, and you'll know why Elan has built a cult following here in the States. To find out more about all the skis or to find an Elan dealer, head on over to elanskis.com. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing, and now is the time to think snow. And skiers, snowboarders, weekend warriors, tubers, sledders, snowbikers, snowmobilers, snowshoers, sled doggers, shovel racers, snow angel makers, ice skaters, snowball fighters, igloo builders, you get it. The doers of winter are starting to get ready to shred, and post-shred, it's all about après. And this year, do après the right way. Forget about the calories, forget about the alcohol, forget about not taking more runs on the mountain, forget about getting in trouble on the way home, because with a beer from Best Day Brewing, you don't have to worry about any negative consequences. Just incredible flavor. Blind taste tests prove that you won't be able to taste the difference between a Best Day and your favorite beer with alcohol. The only difference you'll notice is how good you'll feel in the morning, and you're going to remember what you did last night, which is almost refreshing as a Best Day itself. To celebrate your best day yet, next time you're at the store, pick up a 6-pack of Best Day. Or you can always buy it on your Alaska Airlines flight, Amazon.com, or head on over to bestdaybrewing.com to get the full assortment of Best Days. Those are my sponsors. Now it's time to jump back into the podcast. What's the scariest moment you've had in the mountains other than that time in Alaska with Griffin? I mean, is there a time where you're like, I don't want to do this, but you know you have to?
Well, what I really appreciated working with TGR and also with, all of the mentors and guys that I got to ski with was I never felt like I had to ski something that I didn't want to ski. And there was plenty of times when I was on top of something with Sage or Ian, and or I shouldn't say plenty of times, but a handful where they were like, something feels off. I'm not feeling it. I'm going to get picked back up in the heli. And I think that that's a really important thing to realize, even if everyone's all set up, cameras are in place, all the multiple helis have their doors off and the doors are buried, in the snow far, like it takes hours to set up a shot. And even if all of that is set up, it's never worth making the wrong decision. And I feel really lucky that I got to work with people that totally supported that and mentors that would be like, I'm sorry guys, I don't know what's up, but something is, I'm not going to do it. This isn't feeling right. And so I always felt like I had the agency, but, at the same time, for me, it was like a sliding scale of maybe I'm not feeling it today. That might mean I don't ski anything. It might mean I just choose easier lines. And so it was always like a sliding scale of always trying to push it to your upper limit. And, everything has to be aligned that day. Snow conditions, Abby conditions, where's the team at, where are energy levels at, what's the weather doing? Everything has to line up to ski those lines. And I always felt like I never had to do it. But at the same time, what was expected was to take really good care of myself, right? So I'm always operating in as good of form as I can be, and to be self-aware so that I can realistically be like, yes, today's a good day to push it and I'm going to make good decisions. And even though I am scared, I'm going to really do my best to ski at my upper limit anyways. And that's always the game. It's like, yeah, how hard can you push it on any given day?
And you've seen the consequences of what can happen. I mean, we talked about the loss of Ryan Hawks. He was your partner at a time, a long time ago. And we're not going to talk about that really that much. But when we talked about it before, it was a few years after, and I really didn't understand what that meant to lose a partner. Unfortunately, I've lost a partner since then. And thinking back to having what you went through, and then having to ski a contest run right after that, but just having to go on with your life, months after that. How are you able to deal with that? Because grief's something that we really don't understand until we have it happen to us. And when it's that close to you, that had to really fuck you up, I would think.
Yeah. I know grief is so wild, and you don't really understand the depths or the nonlinear nature of it until you have an experience like that. And I feel like loss and losing the people close to us is, yeah, kind of maybe the number one thing that gets us that close in with grief. And well, I'm sorry to hear that, Mike.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Life and death is so crazy. The memories for the weeks and months after that they're swirly. I have really visceral moments, but I also kind of felt like I was existing in this state of timelessness, trying to make sense of things. And it's just so sobering when someone close to you dies and you face mortality and your own mortality and the fragility of our experience here. And I felt really grateful that for me, what I immediately latched onto was two things. One was that I was like, however I proceed, I want to do it in a way that if Ryan can still see me, he'd be psyched.
Yep.
And so there'd be moments when I'm having a full grief sob fest on the couch, and I'd, have an hour or two of that. And then after a while, when it would taper off, I would think of him and be like, what would he want me to do? And I'd be like, he'd want me to go out skiing, even if I'm not feeling awesome, to get the wind in my face and to, laugh at the sun. And so I'm going to do that for him. And that was really helpful. And I think that was kind of what got me for the following weeks and months. But then the other thing that came into me around the time after he died was, well, it was two things. I had this conversation with this energy worker that I'd worked with before, and I called her right after he died, and she'd done basically distance energy healing on me before. But so she was like the most woo person, like spiritual person that I knew. And I was not really super spiritual at that. I was really into Buddhism and stuff, but not super new agey. And I called her right after Ryan died because I didn't really know what to do. And I really wanted to let him know that I was going to be okay. Like, to go wherever he needed to go, like to not worry about me, that I knew it was going to be hard, but he didn't have to like wait for me to be okay. And so I didn't know what to do. So I called this woman, Gail, and I was like, hey, Gail, I'm driving across the Nevada desert. The craziest thing just happened. Ryan, my boyfriend, died at like 3 a.m. this morning, and I'm still trying to make sense of it, but I just want him to like not worry about me. And I don't know why I felt like I should call you to see if you could talk to him. But she was like, I don't really usually do this kind of a thing, but he's been waiting to chat with you. And she proceeded to like share all of these inside jokes that Ryan and I had. Like, we love to watch Mary Poppins and all, like, just, and he was like, she said that if I wanted to ever talk to him, I could write a letter and burn it in the fireplace, like in Mary Poppins. And there's all of this crazy shit where I was just like, what is happening? Like, what happens to us when we die? Like, she was for sure talking to Ryan somehow. And that blew my mind. And the rest of the summer was kind of filled with really crazy experiences that I couldn't explain. I would ask Ryan for 4-leaf clovers. I have like hundreds of 4-leaf clovers. And I had this little communication system with him that I established over the summer. And it really cracked my brain as far as I feel like there's a lot more going on in the fabric of reality than we have an idea of. But anyways, I digress. But part of the reason why I brought that up is, so I had that conversation with Gail, and then around the time, a couple weeks after he died, I heard that Native Americans treat death as a graduation ceremony. And I love that idea that death is a graduation and that it's a celebration and that it's sad for the ones who are left behind and who miss. It's really hard. And I also didn't believe that Ryan was any place worse, and that it was actually something that I could learn to look at as a celebration of his passing on. Actually, the thing that ended up really helping me with grief and I guess the trauma of that is a mushroom journey down in the desert. And I had taken mushrooms before recreationally, always in nature and stuff. But 6 months after he died, I went down to one of my favorite places in the desert and ate some mushrooms. So I was like, okay, I'm ready now to go there. And it was the first experience that I had had with mushrooms where I was like, holy shit, these are really potent healing tools. It was like I was able to just go through these like racking sobs of grief and like touch this place in me that had been holding that I didn't know how to access, and go through these like cycles of like just crying as hard as I've ever cried in my life, but feeling like it was actually leaving me. And then going into these fits of like belly laughter, remembering memories I had with him, laughing at stuff. And I was just like, holy shit, I forgot what it was felt like in my brain to be happy like this and to actually laugh. And it was just a really, really profound healing experience for me that I would say altered the course of my life in a big way. And so I'm so grateful for them as a tool. I also don't necessarily recommend to anyone listening that going off and taking them alone outside is, not maybe the best idea. But, there's lots of cool things now with veterans and PTSD and, safely facilitated therapeutic settings with guides and everything. But yeah, very potent medicine for me.
And so that helped you, I guess, with closure and a lot of things there. But in speaking of your ski career, where you're getting burned out on it, because that's way before your ski career ends by any means, and I don't want to kind of just run away from that topic. It's a heavy one, and it was a loss, and it sucks. But thinking about your ski career, when you move into it more and you're kind of getting burnt out on skiing, is there a moment in your head where you're thinking to yourself, I can't do this anymore, and maybe mushroom therapy would help me do it even more and I wouldn't hate it as much? Or not hate it, but did it get to a point where you were almost dreading going on these trips, like loving the culture but not wanting to have to put yourself in harm's way?
Well, I remember my very first Alaska trip with Sage. I was like on cloud nine, right? Because I grew up seeing TGR movies, watching Sage ski, and I was sharing a cabin with him on my first Alaska trip. It was with him and Morrison and Dana Flair. So like veterans. And I was like full rookie, only female. And I was just like, don't fuck this up, Angel. Don't fuck this up.
That's a heavy crew, a heavy crew too.
I know. I was like to the TGR crew, I was like, have you guys seen me ski? Do you even know if I can handle this? Because I don't. But yeah, so I was sharing a cabin with Sage, and I just remember him being like, Angel, if you really love skiing, don't become a professional skier. And I was like, haha. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I started to understand what he meant. I think everyone finds their own way to balance the joy and the work part of it, and I just couldn't really do it. But I think for me, the whole production end of things, where it's like, if you're filming skiing or even shooting photos, like setting up to take the shot and the amount of time that you spend trying to, I don't want to say force it or fake it. There's definitely a lot of moments of that with still photography.
Ski acting?
Yeah, exactly. And that to me was always exhausting.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, totally. And I just would like, I'd be exhausted at the end of those days. Just because you're not really skiing, you're sort of hiking up 50 feet and trying to get one slash turn right in the perfect spot, and then you miss it and you got to hike up and go 20 feet over maybe. So mega respect to all of the skiers who are able to do that and make such long careers out of it, because it's super hard work, requires really good communication. Anyways, those days would always, from the beginning, be like, oh God, this is going to be a bit of a force. And there's a lot of days that are spent just kind of capturing photos or little one-turn film shots. And that was kind of the beginning where I was like, oh man, there's a lot of components of not skiing and of standing around and not the aspects of the sport that I love, which is just ripping, fast, wind in your hair, cruising, going wherever you want to go. Like even in Alaska, it's like, you're only getting 4 lines a day, probably, if it's a good day, 4 big lines, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. So after a few years of that, I just like, it started to get a little bit harder to get psyched. And with the sort of lack of just free shredding combined with the amount of time you spend standing around combined with the fear, it was just kind of a gradual, like, before each trip, each year progressively, I was like, all right, here we go. Like little less stoked, until in 2021, I just had a moment. And I think that this happens for people. It was like my soul was like, no more, Angel. You want to do something else with your life, so do it. And I was trying to like leave the front door of my house to go film with my partner Pete and my brother John up at Snowbird in Alta, super low consequence, just resort shredding kind of pow. Like I should have been psyched. There was a lot of components that, had been removed that I didn't like, but I just had a full breakdown and couldn't get myself to like pull on the door handle. And that was when I was like, okay, something in me is really desiring me to do something else with my life. And it's not that I'm a crybaby and it's not that I'm a scaredy cat or whatever. It's like my soul wants to do something different or spirit or whatever. Something in me is longing to do something different, and that's okay. And so on that day, I just was like, okay, we got to wrap up this shoot for vocal. And after that, I'm done.
No way. So it's all just that day.
Well, I was trying to figure out how to make skiing and sailing work. But that winter, when I was like, okay, if I remove Alaska filming from it, and if I, only film ski, right, sponsor ski in ways that are more low consequence, easier, it was just so clear that when I was filming this segment with Pete as the cameraman and my brother John at these resorts that I knew so well, I was like, if I'm not loving it here, like I'm done. I need to call it.
I mean, this is a career that you have. So you grew up and you looked at skiing as something that was going to get you out of the hood, and the hood being in Snowbird or Alta or whatever.
Yeah.
And it got you a college scholarship to go academically to University of Utah. There you find skiing again, and it does get you out of the proverbial hood. It gets you, I mean, I bet you're making at least $100,000 a year by skiing. Would that be fair to say?
Eventually I did. Yeah.
So $100,000 a year eventually that you're making through skiing, which is a shit ton of money, especially for a kid who grew up with nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
like, were you blown away with all the money that you had? Were you like, I'm fucking rich?
Yeah, I was. Well, a lot of it would go back into the sports too, but I wasn't pocketing 100K. But yeah, to see those checks come in, it was really strange for both John and I. Like when we'd go out to sponsor dinner, because then we've both ended up having the same sponsors and filming with TGR. And I remember super early on when I think like Smith or North Face would take us out to dinner, and it took us years before we could stop ordering the cheapest thing on the menu, because it was always like you didn't want to cost them any money. So it was always ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. And it took us a long time to be like, wow, there's like enough money around here that they literally don't care what you order on the menu. And it took us like a couple of years. So there was a shift. There was a couple years where it was just like, this is insane. How people live like this. And then it was just, I was so grateful for it. And yeah, to just like not worry about it, to be able to treat your friends out to dinner once in a while, to, spend my rehab years, like, prepping in Hawaii during the fall and early winter. It was just, I spent a lot of money on experiences that I always wanted outside of skiing. So it was insane. It was so cool and such a crazy turnaround from our childhood.
And I would think like experiences is what you put your money into. Did you buy any things, or did you have no interest in that?
No, I've always been an experience person.
Okay.
I don't really care about, I always had, shitty cars I bought a truck and a snowmobile mostly for skiing, and I still have the truck. I love it. But it was always experiences. And I still feel like that to that day. And that was also actually part of something that I didn't love and was getting burnt out on was the social media component of being a skier. Like it wasn't there in the beginning when I was starting out and signing with the brands. Instagram hadn't even been invented when I first signed my first contracts. And then social media became more of an expectation, and it was about like posting and tagging and talking about your gear. Like I never really gave a shit about my gear. And if I spend money, it's not to get nicer gear. It's always, on an experience. And so as I was like kind of having to be a billboard for these companies and post about products that I, liked, but didn't really care about, that also I didn't love.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start out with Outdoor Research. And if you haven't checked out outdoorresearch.com in the past week or so, then you haven't seen the brand new winter line, which looks incredible. I could spend a lot of this ad telling you all the tech and why Outdoor Research is better, But know that in the 1980s and the early 90s, outdoor research built a reputation on functional quality outdoor gear that pushed the limits of innovative possibilities. And those who were function first were all about OR gear because it was and it still is built better, and outdoor research is still pushing those limits of innovation. This year, the outerwear focuses on 3 new collections: the Cloud Chaser for backcountry and the Powderverse and Hemisphere collections for freeride, as well as some staples in the line like the Snow Crew collection. These outerwear systems are styled for and by athletes like Mark Adma, Troy Podmilsack, Zoe Aitken, snowboarder Neil Provo, and others, and that's why this outerwear collection not only looks so good, but each piece is more functional than ever, and they're all you're going to need in any conditions. To find out more about the new collection, head on over to outdoorresearch.com. My final sponsor this round is Ski Idaho. And if you haven't skied in Idaho, then you're missing the best kept ski secret in the nation. Think 19 uncrowded ski areas with epic terrain that all get a ton of snow. In Idaho, you'll ski a lot more than you're waiting in line, and they really have something for everyone. When you visit Idaho, resorts like Sun Valley, Grand Targhee, Schweitzer, Silver, and Tamarack offer that on-mountain lodging experience, and there are so many other mountains to choose from throughout the state. Between the snow, the terrain, the award-winning restaurants, and experiences like horse-drawn sleigh rides, indoor water parks, spas, skating, guided snowshoeing, and so much more, I'm not kidding when I say there really is something for everyone this winter in Idaho. And if you haven't heard about the 5th and 6th grade passport program that allows kids to ride multiple times at each resort for only $29, you need to check it out. It's worth visiting Idaho just for that. To find out more about the passport program and all things skiing in Idaho, head on over to skiidaho.us. Those are my sponsors. Now it's time to jump back into the podcast. So the business of being a pro athlete wasn't your favorite thing, but you could deal with the early parts of just doing the photo shoots and sending in expense reports. But once social media came out and they expected you to do 5 hours a week of posting shit saying, look at me, and look at this product, that wasn't you?
No, I really don't love it. I don't know. Instagram is quite a tool, quite a weapon, maybe. But what's been interesting now is now I have to market for myself and my business. I've kind of, gone into some entrepreneurial pursuits, and it's hard to market yourself. But at the same time, I really believe in the things that I'm posting about. Like if I have to make a post about something, whether it's like a service I'm selling or I don't know, it's all experiential. And I just find it's easier for me to use social media as a business tool when it's about stuff that I really, really believe in. And ski products, like it was just hard to dredge that up.
Okay. And then you said you and your brother shared sponsors in your career. And when you think about it, I'm not going to say you're the better skier, but in terms of gender, you were the number 1 female skier in the world, I feel like, for a few years. And Johnny, he's never been number 1, but he's always been up there. Whatever, he's a great skier, incredible. But based on that and contracts, did you or he make more money?
Well, at the beginning, I did, for sure. I don't think he was far behind me.
But gender never played into it?
No, I feel like I was really lucky in the contract that I was signing and feeling well valued. Yeah, because I had so much success, I think I feel like my contracts reflected that, and I felt really lucky and appreciated by my brands. So I hope I wasn't I wasn't trying to shit talk the companies when I was talking about having to post about jackets that I didn't believe in, because, products and brands to me are slightly different. And I felt so grateful for the brands that sponsored me. And yeah, I did. I think I made more money than John for most of it, but I think towards the end, he started to pull away because also his social media following got bigger and bigger. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I mean, was there any other sexism that you ever experienced in the industry? I mean, did people say, like, you shouldn't take that line because we've got this guy here?
I have so much to say about this, but I'll keep it short. And in essence, my view on it was that, I think I was really lucky in that I was just with people that wanted to lift me up. And also, I had the best experience. People really wanted to, like, before I had made it anywhere, the first trip up with the guys in Alaska and every, trip after that, it was like everyone wanted to help me. And I don't know if it was my approach or I didn't feel like I ever had anything to prove from the get-go. I always felt like I had a lot to learn and I was hungry. And so I would ask the guys hundreds of questions like every day up in Alaska, and they'd be so patient with me. But I was just like, I would just scour their brains for their knowledge and their experience and what they thought and just learning, learning, learning. And so I think that I don't know if it was that approach or what, but it was like every single guy wanted to see me succeed. And if I ever wanted a line like strong, and maybe, you fly into a zone and there's usually like a prize line. And we usually kind of take turns on who gets what, choice A. And if I ever really was like, you guys, I'm really feeling this one, always, always, it would be like, fuck yeah, Angel, take it. And so I felt very championed. And I think it's also because I really felt like we were all on the same team. And I didn't feel like because I was a girl, they were going to take advantage of me. And I don't know, there's just, I guess, a lot of mutual respect. And I had that throughout my whole career, and I felt really grateful for it. And I know that that's not everyone's experience. And also, I think the fact that I didn't feel like I had to prove how good I was helped me to just be cool with not knowing and learning and improving. And then when the guys are like, oh, yeah, she's listening, she's learning, she's applying it, like the stoke goes all the way around, and it's kind of a true mentorship thing happening.
You're the number one woman in skiing. It was like that for a few different years, and all these brands put money behind you, and you saw that with the contracts. Did the pressure get that much more on your shoulders of having to pick bigger lines, of having to post more, and having to do a lot more things that you didn't want to do because you had that light shined on you as being the female to watch in skiing?
I never really felt that pressure, honestly. It's always been a solo game. For me, it's always been about, am I skiing to my potential? It wasn't like, what are people going to think of this? Or am I living up to the other people's expectations? It was like, I was never able to even live up to my own expectations. Like there was very few lines that I skied and got to the bottom of and was like, yeah, sick, I crushed it. I would always get to the bottom and be like, oh, I had more in the tank. Why did I scrub speed before this air blow? I would just pick myself apart.
But that's the perfectionist in you, right? Of like, you can never do anything perfect.
Exactly. And so that was always the loud voice in my head. And I don't know, I didn't really care what other people thought because it was always just with me and my own skiing and my own body and the mountain. And in some ways, I think that was beautiful because I didn't feel external pressure from my sponsors or whatever. It was like I knew what I was capable of and I wanted to get there.
So you have this relationship with all of the athletes and all the people with the film company and all these things going through your whole career. But at the same time, you've got this juxtaposition in your head of like, I'm not as passionate anymore. I'm not having as much fun anymore. So when you have that moment where you realize that when you're done the shoot with your brother and your partner and you're going to be done with skiing, then when you have that epiphany, who's the first brand that you call and let them know? And how hard is that for you?
Yeah, I lost sleep over that for a hot minute because I realized I was going to be done. It was in February when that film trip was happening, and I was in the middle of some multi-year contracts. So not really a great time to break it off. And when I was going through the contracts, they can rescind the money that they've already paid you that year. And I had been, using my paycheck to pay for the sailboat for a couple of years at that point. And we were getting ready to sail across, the Atlantic.
So you had already found your partner, you had already bought a sailboat, and there was already a direction. You already knew what you were doing. So I'm going to back up really quick. And when did you make the call to buy the sailboat? And you already knew that you already knew you were going to throw a grenade on your career and go sail the world. So how did that first happen? Because you met your partner. He was at TGR selling partnerships. You guys kind of click through there, and we'll say a love story happens from there. He's got a sailing background. You two buy a sailboat together. And what's the idea? Like, hey, we're going to sail the world and leave this life that we have?
Well, I was thinking that I was going to try and balance sailing around the world with him and skiing.
Okay.
Because when we bought the sailboat, I wasn't like, I'm going to drop a grenade on my ski career. I was like, I'm making good money. Now I've got another passion I can explore. How can I make both work? because when we look at people that make big changes, I think sometimes there's really big moments, right? When I was like, okay, I'm done with skiing. I'm going to tell my sponsors no at some point when it's the right time and I get the guts to do it. But there are so many little decisions along the way, that lend ourselves to making big changes. And I think it's easy to look at people that do big career changes or make, huge shifts in their life. And it's like, a lot of times there's more steps behind the scenes going on than we see. And so I bought the sailboat. I was like, okay, I'm going to try and balance my ski career and sailing with Pete. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I was terrified to leave skiing because I'd never made money any other way. I'd never been a barista. I had no idea what having a job would look like, who would hire me. All I'd ever been was a ski bum, right? So I was going to try and make money from skiing as long as I could. So I blew my knee that time, that we were talking about when I was all scared. And I immediately felt, oh, this is a window of opportunity for what? I don't know, but I'm going to stay open and curious this summer and I'm going to just listen to my gut. And part of that listening was like, I'd never asked a guy out, but when I met Pete that summer, I asked him out, and only guy I've ever asked out. So nailed it. And yeah, pretty quickly into knowing each other, we're like, let's do this dream and sail around the world and pull it off. We bought the sailboat like a month and a half after meeting each other. It just crazy, crazy stars aligned kind of a deal, blah, blah. But, we spent the year of COVID working on it. And I was still trying to figure out how to balance them both. But when I had that experience filming at home, 2021, after COVID, and being like, oh man, I'm like really burnt out. I can't even try and figure out how to milk skiing. Like, I'm done. That was when I was like, okay, I'm going to drop a bomb and leave skiing completely. But what had been, I think, a crucial part in making me feel safe enough to do that was when I realized, like, okay, my life is changing quite a bit. I'm shifting things up. What do I also really love and care about and want to study, just as something to pursue to help support me during this time of trying to ask big questions and not have any answers? I was like, I really love the healing arts, and I studied Ayurveda for a really long time, which is a lifestyle system slash healing practice out of India that was really helpful for me dealing with some adrenal issues, yada, yada. I was like, I want to get better at Ayurveda. My teacher was like, go through the program I went through, and it helps you launch your own business where you can become an Ayurvedic health coach. So over the course of that winter, as I was getting burnt out on skiing, I was also working through and getting certified to be a health coach. And I started working with people that winter and started making money through things that I've always loved, which is like deep conversation about healing and lifestyle practices. And I think that was a really crucial component of being like, oh, okay, I can start to see an opening into supporting myself and having a sustainable life. And the financial piece and the security piece is a really big component for all of us. And looking at leaving skiing totally and not even knowing how to make money another way, I think would have been too big of a jump. But once making money from health coaching came in, and, just like another possibility helped me to be like, okay, I'm done with skiing. I feel like I have enough to go on to take a blind step onto the lily pad. And to answer your question of like when I decided versus when I told my sponsors and how scared I was, I decided in February that I was done. That was when I like couldn't leave the house at that day. And I was like, okay, shit, in the middle of these contracts, they might take the money back, but I just got to go for it and hope that they don't. But I didn't tell them until August.
Okay.
Yeah. I felt like the spirit in which you bring a conversation or maybe a point of tension, like with your partner or with any relationship, the spirit in which you bring it has a big, I think, effect on how it's perceived and how it plays out. And I had to get to a place inside of me where I wasn't afraid of what they were going to say, where I knew this was the right decision for me. I knew I was really excited about it. I was not only convicted, but like full of excitement and empowerment. And I could hold that in the face of even sponsors potentially saying, what the fuck or whatever. I had to reach this point of inner stability and inner power, for lack of better words. So when I finally reached that place and finally brought it to him, I was like, I'm incredibly excited for this chapter ahead, and I'm going to be leaving skiing, and I really appreciate everything you have done for me beyond words, and I'm going to miss you, and this is my direction, full stop. And I think if I had tried to bring the conversation earlier, it might have been like, I'm so sorry, or like grovelly or scared, or being like, is there anything that you need me to do before I just like it ways that felt icky in just not standing in the truth of how good I felt about the decision and the direction moving forward. So it was really important for me to find that place to be able to have these really scary, hard conversations. And I didn't know what they were going to say, but every single one of them was like, oh my God, Angel, I'm so excited for you. I'm really going to miss working with you. It's been such a joy. And like, go get him, Tiger. Every single conversation like made me cry from just how supported I felt, and like didn't feel like, well, you owe us this, or what about your mid-year like there was none of that. And I felt so grateful for that.
That is pretty awesome. And then the next thing you have to get used to after you've gotten used to telling all these people that you're not going to be skiing for them anymore is living on a 39-foot boat. And when you're used to being in the mountains and having all the space in the world, going into a cramped 39-foot boat, did that take some time to get used to?
Well, not really, actually, because our family spent our summers living in a van
Oh,
and
yeah,
like
that's right.
backpacking out of the van.
So you're used to being uncomfortable like that.
Yeah, and in tight quarters with other people.
How about an ocean crossings? You're in a 39-foot boat. You've been in bad storms, stuck in a tent, I'm sure, for times before in the mountains. What's it like being stuck in a boat when the weather's just terrible?
Yeah, it's hard to give a sense of how remote it is when you're out in the middle of the ocean and big swells, because there's so many dynamic forces in the ocean that there's points where you're like, our survival is really dependent on how well we take care of the boat, the decisions that we make. Because if we get shipwrecked way out here, you know, now with GPS technology and stuff, like you can probably get a merchant vessel, or but like there's places where you can't just call a coast guard, like you can't just call search and rescue and have them come, because the amount of like distance that you'll travel, and there's so many like just really dynamic factors that you definitely feel when you're out there. And a lot of it is about your trust in the boat, for me at least. We spent a year and a half refitting Sea Bear and just like getting to know the ins and outs. And she's just built so sturdy. She's made of steel. And so for me, when it was really rough like that, it was, are we making conservative decisions? And do we trust the boat? And do we trust the maintenance that we've put into it? And so every time, if it was like really rough seas or bad weather, I was just like, I trust Sea Bear. That was my faith. So yeah.
And what's scarier, being in a storm in the mountains or on the water?
That's a good question. I think the water is scarier for me because it was new, and there's always kind of that sense of I don't know what I don't know. And there's some moments like on our second transatlantic passage when the conditions were getting pretty heavy, and we had this pirate encounter, and we were super underslept, and the weather was picking up, and Sea Bear was making noises I hadn't heard her make. And I just looked at Pete and I was like, are we okay? Like, is this, this is like is this okay? And he's like, yeah, we're good. But it was scary just because I don't have as much experience. And so I don't know all of the risk factors as well as the mountains.
Tell us about the pirates, because that sounds interesting.
Yeah, well, TBD on if it was pirates, but it was like a week into Atlantic crossing, coming from the Canary Islands, sailing across the South Atlantic to Grenada, an island in the Caribbean. So the whole passage took us 3 weeks. We're a week into it. So we're like a third of the way there. We're out in the middle of nowhere, but we're off 800 miles off the coast of Africa. And I wasn't on watch, so I was sleeping down in the bunk below, but I hear some commotion. And I wake up and I go up on deck, and there's like, we had some friends that were helping us crew the boat, and Pete, and there's some scurrying and anxiety happening. I'm just like, what's going on? And they point back to this boat that's behind us. And they're like, this boat has been following us for the past 4 hours, and it's gaining on us. And it's a bigger boat than we have. but they're not responding on the radio. They're not showing up on like the GPS chart plotter system. Like every boat has a little transmitter so you can see when you look at it's called a chart plotter. It's like a little GPS map.
Okay.
Other vessels will show up on there. And so you can see, oh, look, 2 miles ahead of us, there's a boat. And, it has a little transit signal for safety. You can see their trajectory, the angle that they're sailing, and the speeds. You can avoid collisions with tankers and all sorts of stuff like that we have now that we didn't used to have, which is pretty cool. But they're not responding on the radio. They're totally within range. They have lights on the boat, so they have electricity. They're not showing up on the chart plotter. And there's another light way in the distance that looks like a really big ship, also not showing up on the chart plotter. We're like, this is weird. Also not responding on the radio. And then the weirdest thing was we're sailing downwind, and it's big seas. It's midnight. It's probably blowing like 23 knots, and it's probably like 2-meter swell. So it's really dark, quite windy, and, not huge swell, but not small either. And they don't have their sails up, and they're 800 miles offshore. Like, if it's blowing that hard, so there's all these factors that are really weird. So immediately we're like, oh my God, this is a vessel in distress. And they've seen us now, and they're trying to like get our attention,
Yeah.
And so I immediately go into like, is it an inexperienced crew? Sometimes, rich people will pay for a captain to sail their boat, and they don't have a lot of experience. I'm like, is it an incapacitated captain and an inexperienced crew? Did they get hit by lightning and now they're on backup power, but their electrical systems got fritz? Like, we're immediately giving them the benefit of the doubt and going, also their boat was super nice and way nicer than Sea Bear. And so we're immediately like, oh my God, they need help. But the problem is they're slowly gaining on us. We've made a couple course shifts and they're following us. And they get within like 4 boat lengths of us. We're trying to outrun them, but they get so close. And in those seas, it's like super dangerous to get close, especially that close. And then to kind of make matters more intense, one of the women that was helping us crew Sea Bear on the way back was a friend of a friend. And she had been stranded at sea with her dad when she was 16, coming back from Hawaii to California. And they ran out of food, ran out of water. So she really felt the gravity of, if they need help, we need to help them, because she'd been in that situation before. So we're really feeling her, like, really concerned for them. So they're gaining on us. It's starting to get dangerous. And then we see people come on deck with headlamps and put those, like buoy balls, fenders out on the sides, like you're going to tie up together. And we're just like, what are they doing? Because if you get it even within a boat length, like, you can, with those swells, like you can demast both boats. Their boat is really expensive and nice. So like, why would they be endangering their boat? And so we're just like, maybe they're panicked and they're not thinking clearly. And they're just like trying to get aboard, like a drowning person, trying to drown the person that's trying to save you.
Yeah.
But it's getting so dangerous. And we're underpowered and we're like, shit. And so Pete's like, I need to go down and I need to think. So he goes down below and he comes up and he's like, got his little red headlamp on. And he's, in the little narrow part of the companionway looking up at us. And he's like, I think we need to go dark and jibe. And it's like this line out of a movie. But essentially what that means is like, jibing is essentially changing directions downwind. But when the main sail goes from being on one side of the boat and you like pull it in, and then you let it out on the other side of the boat, it's not ideal, especially in heavy winds, because when you're bringing the sail like across the boat and it starts to catch on the other direction, it can just be really hard on the equipment, can break shit.
Just the boom.
Yeah, exactly. And it happens really fast. There's a lot of force. And so it's not ideal. You usually try and avoid it in heavy winds. But based on everything that was happening, it was like, okay, we need to do that. And so we started gearing up to do that. And we turned off all the lights on the boat. We turned off the chart plotter. We turned off all our headlamps. We turned off everything. And we basically turned like 90 degrees so that we were taking the waves like straight across our beam. So sideways. And so it's like rocking the boat like crazy, but we have our sails out. And so the sails kind of stabilize the boat motion. And when the boat behind us turned as well, they're getting pushed around a lot more because they don't have their sails up. And so it's way less efficient and way slower. And so we were able to like slowly gain on them until we were out of eyesight of them. But they were like trying to follow us. And part of the crew is like, well, we need to stay close and keep an eye on them. What if they're sinking? What if there's a medical emergency? And Pete's just like, the only way we can help them is if they get into their life raft and then like come up to a sea bear in their inflatable life raft. Like we can't get close to them. They're endangering us. I don't want to go anywhere near them. I don't want to stay close enough to keep an eye, but there's a little bit of tension on board with, you know, what we should be doing and what's going on. Like nothing was really making sense. And so we called the Portuguese Navy because that was the closest basically like number because they don't have a Coast Guard. And we were just like, hey, here's what's going on. They asked for our coordinates. Well, the first thing they asked was, how do you know the vessel was in distress? And we were like, don't have a great answer.
Yeah.
And that kind of got us thinking. But at this point, we've been in the slow motion chase thinking that our boat is going to get sank potentially at any moment for like a couple hours. But the whole thing went on for, I don't know, 6 hours. Well, more than 6 hours.
Whoa.
6 hours when I was up. But it was going on before that because the boat was gaining on them for like hours before. So Pete hadn't slept all night. And as we're kind of on the phone with the Portuguese Navy, it's starting to get light out. And so, you know, we give them the coordinates of that vessel and they're like, okay, we're going to send some merchant ships that way. And the rest of the crew went down to sleep. And Pete and I are like, do we stay close enough to keep an eye on the boat, see if it starts sinking? And Pete's just like, honestly, I don't trust them. I don't want to get close enough where, and now it's going to be daylight. So, you know, we won't be able to lose them as easily because they'll be able to see us. And he was like, I feel like we've done what we can and we need to take care of us. We still have 2 weeks or so ahead of us at sea. So we made the call to just trust that the Portuguese Navy and the merchant ships and stuff would help them if they needed help. But, you know, we paid attention. We called up after the trip was done and no record of any vessel being lost or whatever. And so we still don't really know what it was, but because I was like, they can't be pirates. No pirate would endanger both ships 800 miles out at sea. You know, no pirate would risk sinking both of them. But then someone was like, well, I've heard that they have like beater ships that they'll go out and, you know, try and pirate other boats, and then they'll have like a bigger ship that they're kind of basing off out at sea. And so it made us think of that other big ship on the horizon that also wasn't on the chart plotter and also wasn't responding on the radio. So still don't know, but it was a pretty harrowing experience.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds pretty scary if people are trying to board your boat in the middle of nowhere in the middle of a storm, which sounds sketchy as shit as it is. But we went way too far into that story, which means I'm going to cut a little bit of stuff. I'm going to say that you come back from sailing after a couple years. It's like 2023. You have a whole bunch of shit going on. You end up going to Burning Man, which is something that you do a bunch of different times. But this year at Burning Man, I don't think it's all about self-exploration and all different stuff. It's more like you were sleeping like 12, 14 hours a day and you came back with I can't go back on the boat and live on the boat anymore. And now you're back here on land.
Yeah, that was essentially it. I'd been to Burning Man quite a few times, but that year when I went after living on the boat for a couple years, I just was so depleted. And I was like, oh, living on board 24/7 is more tiring for my body than I realized. And I need to replenish my physical stores. And I don't know that I want to live on the boat 24/7. So we still wanted to like pick sailing life back up, but we also we ran out of money. I'd spent all the savings for my ski career on the boat, on the adventure, on us not having to work, which was epic. But we're like, okay, we need to figure out how to make this sustainable. We need to enter the next chapter and figure out, do we work 6 months a year and then do sailing life? And we're still trying to figure that out.
All right. So that's where we are as we're figuring it out. But what I'm going to figure out is how I'm going to end the podcast. And I do this in a certain way each week. Last time, I think we did it with Hadley Hammer 8 years ago. Oh, no. She asked you some inappropriate questions. Well, I actually connected with Hadley recently because I was hoping she was in Jackson Hole because I was going there. But she lives in Chamonix now. I didn't get her to ask the inappropriate questions. I was able to get a person that's probably the best person to ask these questions. Probably the best abs in pro skiing. He's also a legend in the mountains from the time he climbed the 7 summits as a kid. And in the pro ski world, he's done a whole lot of things, from chasing his older sister to becoming a big name himself in the ski world. I'm talking about your little brother, Johnny Collinson. He's a great human. He came up with 3 questions for me. And are you ready for question number 1 from your brother?
Uh-oh. Yeah.
This was way harder than I thought it would be. Couple low balls first. Number 1, do you prefer puppy chow or trail mix, and why?
Okay, well, it's not as innocent as the question seems. They used to make fun of me because, well, when we were camping, all summer we'd get the Costco trail mix that was full of peanuts, and I don't like peanuts, and that was like all we ate all summer backpacking and hiking. I just came to really not like it, but it was kind of the only food source available. But ever since I was little, and probably going up to when I was too old to be doing this. Well, actually, yeah, no, I remember doing this when I was 12. I liked dog food better than I liked trail mix. So sometimes I would eat, especially the puppy food. Sometimes I would eat, we'd be training avalanche puppies and take them out into the mountains on camping trips with us. And I would, eat the puppy food. Dad and I would be like, we don't have too much of that. You have to cut back. So.
That's funny. All right, we'll go to question number 2.
There was a lot of mental warfare surrounding candy as kids. And how long exactly can you make one starburst last?
Oh, yeah. So again, we'd go on these 2-week backpacking trips, and we'd ration out. We'd get the Costco candy bags. And so you'd have 20 starburst or maybe 30 starbursts for the entire 2-week backpacking trip. We'd also get some blow pops. And so the warfare he's referring to is I would trick him into thinking I had eaten my blow pop, because I would break the stick off and put it in my mouth and be like, I'm eating mine, John. So mean. And he'd be like, okay. And so he'd eat his. And then I'd be like, just kidding. I still have an extra. And it was so cruel. But in order to draw out the starburst, I would pinch off the teeniest, tiniest little size piece of a BD, and I would just suck on that for 5 minutes, and then I would pull off another chunk the size of a BD, and so I could make one starburst last 2 hours.
All right, your final inappropriate question. Here we go.
The last question's a little theoretical. So we're out in the woods and a grizzly bear charges. Mike Hucker throws you in front of the grizzly bear, and you get 2 oddly specific weapons to choose from. Are you fighting the grizzly bear with a giant black dildo wrapped in tinfoil that was placed in your coach's backpack in Switzerland? Or are you using the brown bowl, puke bucket / salad bowl from our childhood?
That is a good one. I mean, obviously, I'd have to go with the tinfoil wrapped, sparkly diversion. It's got some girth and weight to it. We were at a Red Bull camp, performing under pressure. It's a really cool camp, all about learning what fear and nerves do to the body and how to respond.
When he says Mike Hucker, is he talking about the biker Mike Hucker?
So we were in the backwoods in Montana, and we were all the athletes were walking on this trail, and someone's like, oh my God, a grizzly. And we look back, and this massive grizzly bear is charging all of us. But we didn't realize, and Mike Hucker was part of that crew, so that's why he said it. I can't remember. Everyone had different reactions to getting charged by a grizzly, and it was pretty hilarious. But we didn't realize it was a trained bear, and that was part of our fear training. It played into this whole next assignment, but yeah, it was a setup.
Oh, that's incredible. And I guess one question I'll throw in there based on our last podcast is, do you still wear a vibrator around your neck?
You had to do it.
I had to.
No, I've matured.
All right, there we go. We've matured. And that's Inappropriate Questions. That's our podcast. And it's great to catch back up, because the last time we talked, you were at the height of your pro skierdom. And while it looked like you were on top of the world, and you were in the ski world, you weren't doing what made you totally happy, it feels like. And then you took a leap that most people will never take in their life, quitting a profession that you were the best at just because you weren't feeling it. And that's not an easy thing to do. And while being a pro skier is something that you'll always be remembered for, you'll also be remembered for leaving on your own terms in your prime. And there's something to be said for that. Your story is a cool one. And I thank you for sharing your story and your time again with me.
Thanks, Mike. It was an honor. Thanks for having me and just sending you so much love in your grief journey.
So that was time with Angel Collinson, and while Angel had such an incredible career, she really doesn't sound like she misses it at all. In fact, she sounds happy, she's very introspective about her life and times, and it's cool that she bowed out when she did. I mean, she was force-fed skiing from the time she was born almost, and it's all she knew. And she was one of those kids and one of those people that have that perfectionist drive and the athletic ability to go along with it. So she was going to be successful in whatever endeavor she entered. I should have asked her what sport she would have liked to have been force-fed into if she could look back and change it all from when she was a kid. Because skiing was what she was put into, but I bet Angel is one of those people that if she would be a soccer player, she would be on the U.S. team right now because she would have put in those 10,000 million hours because she's one of those perfectionists, which did come out in the podcast. But I didn't ask her that question, and that is quite okay. That's the podcast. Thank you for listening. Please review me wherever you listen. And please share this on your social media. It does help the show grow. Finally, please listen to my sponsors' ads, or I hope you did listen to my sponsors' ads when they played earlier, and buy their products. The brands that make this podcast happen are Elan Skis, Outdoor Research, Best Day Brewing, and Ski Idaho. Have a great week, everyone.